We've seen this coming for months now. We've been speculating about it for over a year, but now that the announcement has finally been made, it just feels kind of surreal. Feels like I woke up in an episode of The Twilight Zone yesterday. Let's talk about Jimmie Johnson's huge announcement. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. And yeah, so this is it. Well, I guess 2020 is technically it for Jimmie Johnson. But yesterday, Jimmie Johnson stunned the NASCAR community with his announcement that he will be retiring from the Cup Series at the end of next season.
I'm so thankful for 18 incredible years of racing in NASCAR. I'm looking forward to next season and celebrating what will be my last year as a full-time NASCAR Cup driver.
Yes, there you have it. The driver of this generation, Jimmie Johnson, 7-time Cup Series champion, 83-time winner, which is good for 6th on the all-time list. He will be hanging it up at the end of next season. Probably not for good. He has hinted in recent months that he would be interested in maybe running a couple open-wheel races, maybe some sports car races, maybe something off the beaten trail. He's still going to be racing, I'd say, at some point in his not-so-distant future. But at the end of next season, he'll be done in the Cup Series, at least full-time, for sure. And like I said at the very beginning of this episode, this isn't shocking news. I think a lot of us have kind of seen this possibly coming. I know I've talked about it on this show for over a year. Back when Jimmie Johnson signed his most recent contract extension with Hendrick, it was up at the end of 2020, and given his age, he's in his 40s now, and that's kind of been the sweet spot for when drivers have been retiring recently. Myself, as well as many other fans, kind of have been expecting this announcement for quite some time. His contract is up after next season, and he opted not to sign a new extension. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about Jimmie Johnson, his legacy, what he has brought to NASCAR, because he has done so much for the sport. Like I said, he's the driver of this most recent generation. People who grew up like me, who've been watching NASCAR for 15, 20 years, it's been the Jimmie Johnson show. It's been his sport. But then I also want to talk about the bigger picture and looking ahead, what this means going forward for NASCAR. 2021 is shaping up to be an extremely important season for a multitude of reasons. So we're going to talk about all that and more in this episode. This is the Jimmie Johnson Show. He deserves his own episode. He's the GOAT, one of the GOATs. It's arguable if he's the GOAT, but I think he's allowed to have that status next to his name. He is in the conversation for the greatest of all time in NASCAR. Jimmie Johnson made his full-time Cup Series debut in 2002 for Hendrick Motorsports. He was always in that 48 car, and infamously that year he actually lost the Rookie of the Year battle to Ryan Newman. But even in that rookie season, he immediately established himself as one of the perennial favorites every single week. He won his first championship in 2006, ran off 5 straight titles from 2006 through 2010. Then he took a couple years off, but won again in 2013, and that, I believe, is what caused NASCAR to introduce the current playoff format we have now. NASCAR fans do not like domination. They don't like it when one driver, one team is winning every week. They like parity. They like a lot of different people winning a lot of different races. And so NASCAR, I think, saw Jimmie Johnson winning 6 championships in 8 years or 9 years, whatever it was, and thought they needed to make a change. That's why we have the championship 4 now. Jimmie Johnson, being the stud that he is, still went out and won another championship in 2016. So it doesn't matter the format, Jimmie Johnson always rose to the top. Up until this season, Jimmie Johnson was the only driver in the Cup Series to qualify for the chase or the playoffs every single year of its existence. From 2004 all the way up through 2018, Jimmie Johnson was the only driver to make the playoffs every single year. This year, obviously, he missed the playoffs. This was his worst statistical season. Jimmie hasn't won a race in 2.5 years, a points-paying race at least. But that stat still is very noteworthy. He went 16 consecutive seasons from 2002 to 2017 where he won more than one race. He won 2 or more races in 16 consecutive years. That's extremely hard to do. Not many have done that. Now, pretty much all of Jimmie Johnson's success also happened when he was paired with Chad Knaus as his crew chief. The two of them, the Brady and Belichick basically of NASCAR. As great of a driver Jimmie Johnson is, Chad Knaus definitely played a major role in giving him some of the best equipment you could possibly get. And the two of them working together for a decade and a half produced some incredible results. And we've seen this year now that Chad Knaus is working with William Byron, he's turned Byron from a 23rd place driver into a 12th place driver. So Chad Knaus is the real deal. Jimmie Johnson definitely owes some of his success to Chad Knaus. I think they were a very dynamic duo. Brady and Belichick wouldn't be the same without each other. I think the same is with Chad Knaus and Jimmie Johnson. So that was a pairing, a match made in heaven, and it's produced one of the most dominant duos NASCAR's ever seen. If there really is any knock against Jimmie Johnson as far as his contributions to the sport, it's just that maybe, quite frankly, he was kind of boring off the track. He didn't have a fiery personality like Tony Stewart. He wasn't controversial like Kurt or Kyle Busch. He didn't have like an iconic style or look or feel like Dale Earnhardt or Richard Petty before him. He was just kind of a guy. A really talented driver, a really classy, well-spoken guy that was out here dominating NASCAR for a decade and a half. So if there's any knock against Jimmie Johnson, it's that he wasn't necessarily the most interesting character. But all of his competitors respect the crap out of him. All of his teammates have respected him. All the fans, I'd say, at least respect him. You don't have to like Jimmie Johnson or be a fan, but you have to be crazy to not respect what Jimmie Johnson's been able to do on and off the racetrack. So, all right, I'll set this aside. I'm not going to sit here and just gush about Jimmie Johnson for 15 minutes. Let's talk about what this means in the bigger picture for the sport. But Jimmie Johnson, he's a legend. Doesn't matter what he does in 2019 or 2020. He may not win another race ever again. He may not make the playoffs next year. I think he'll be a shot. I think he'll have a shot at it. I think he and Cliff Daniels will work well together. But Jimmie Johnson deserves... He's obviously going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He might be the first or one of the first. Have they had a unanimous Hall of Famer yet in NASCAR? First ballot Hall of Famer? There have probably been some unanimous Hall of Famers, but Jimmie Johnson should definitely be another one of them. Whenever he becomes eligible, I guess 2023, he'll become eligible at this rate. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer unanimously. If you don't vote Jimmie Johnson to the Hall of Fame, you're out of it. So Jimmie Johnson, yeah, he's a legend. But let's talk about what this means going forward for not just him, not just Hendrick Motorsports, but also for the entire sport of NASCAR. Because Jimmie Johnson, like it or not, he's the most famous driver currently racing in 2019. He is the closest thing I think NASCAR has right now to kind of a household name. Jeff Gordon's not here anymore. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is not here anymore. Tony Stewart's not here anymore. And I'd say those were household names. Most people who aren't even NASCAR fans know who those guys are. Jimmie Johnson, lesser than those guys. Less people know who Jimmie Johnson is. But a lot of people still do. When they see the 48 car, a lot of people know that that's associated that with NASCAR, associate that with greatness, and a lot of people know Jimmie Johnson. He's the last thing I'd say NASCAR has today, the closest thing to a household name. But after 2021, NASCAR's going to have to look elsewhere for one of those. Let's really quick talk about what this could mean for Hendrick Motorsports. I know I did a whole silly season update episode yesterday, and I'll have more to talk about as this offseason rolls along, I'm sure. But looking ahead to 2021, the 48 car for the first time since 2001 is going to be wide open. And what makes this really interesting is that Ally Financial, who came on in 2019 as the full-time sponsor for Jimmie Johnson, they recently signed an extension. They're going to be full-time sponsors for Hendrick Motorsports through 2023. So after Jimmie retires, that's still 3 more seasons that Ally so far has committed to that race team. One interesting thought here is that Alex Bowman, with Nationwide leaving after this season now, next year, he's still looking for sponsorship for 2020, and assumedly he's going to be looking for sponsorship beyond 2020. Maybe Ally jumps over to the 88 car if Hendrick Motorsports really believes in Alex Bowman, really wants to continue to have him in the seat. If they can't find other partners, maybe Ally Financial is the partner they need to keep Alex Bowman in that seat, help him continue to grow. Otherwise, though, if say Ally stays on the 48 car, there are a lot of solid young drivers and maybe drivers who are in the Cup Series already that are looking for upgrades that really could be strong candidates for that 48 car. There's a lot of drivers at the end of next season that are in contract years that are going to be free agents that are going to be looking around for new opportunities. We'll start with the young guys in the Hendrick kind of camp. Noah Gragson down there for Junior Motorsports. He just finished his first year in that 9 car. He'll be racing again full-time for them next year. Definitely going to need to see a little bit more improvement. He didn't win any races this year in Xfinity. He's going to have to contend for more wins, win a few races, I'd say, next year to actually be a consideration for the 48 car. But Noah Gragson, I think, is the kind of guy Rick Hendrick's looking at as possibly the heir, the next inheritant of that race car in the Cup Series at some point soon. But a lot of people are also looking over at Kyle Larson. Chip Ganassi's kept his contract under wraps for quite a while now, but the rumor is they're kind of going on a year-to-year basis with Kyle Larson. Chip Ganassi loves him. Chip Ganassi does not want to lose Kyle Larson, but Kyle Larson, a lot of people for a long time have said maybe he's getting held back a little bit by that equipment. Ganassi took a big step forward this year, added Kurt Busch. Both their cars made the playoffs. Both Larson and Busch won a race this year, so maybe that's starting to encourage Larson to stay. Maybe Chip Ganassi really is turning into a long-term success story in NASCAR. But for a while there, a lot of people looked at Kyle Larson as the kind of guy who might jump over to a team like Hendrick if given the opportunity. Ross Chastain's another name I'd throw out there. He's going to be racing for a Chevy team, colleague, racing in the Xfinity Series next year. You never know. 2021 rolls around. Chastain's got a brand. He's got some success. He's got some stats to make his case. Maybe Chastain ends up with Hendrick Motorsports. He could be in the 48 car in 2021. That wouldn't be shocking to me. But there are other good young drivers in contract years next year. I mean, look at Eric Jones over at Joe Gibbs Racing. You guys might think I'm crazy, but Eric Jones only signed a 1-year extension. So at the end of 2020, Eric Jones is going to be in the same position he was in this year. He's going to be looking for a new contract. And if Joe Gibbs Racing maybe opts to go with Christopher Bell or sees him more as their long-term future, Eric Jones, I think he's a talented enough driver. I think he could still do really well in the 48 car. Maybe Eric Jones could shockingly end up with Hendrick Motorsports, but I don't know about that one. That one's maybe a little bit more of a stretch. But as we've seen with Daniel Suarez bouncing from Gibbs to SHR, and now he might be going to RCR, drivers can bounce between teams like it's nobody's business. I mean, Suarez is looking at possibly his third different manufacturer in 3 seasons if he does in fact go to RCR at some point this offseason. It's crazy. Drivers are not really that loyal to any one team or manufacturer anymore, and teams and manufacturers aren't really loyal to any one driver anymore. That's pretty uncommon. The only cases of that are, Gibbs and Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. They're loyal. Those guys are loyal because they've been doing it for a long, long time now. I mean, look at Matt DiBenedetto. Rolled into Toyota, rolled into Levine, a Gibbs affiliate, thought this is the start of my career. I could really be competitive here, and not even a full year into his first season, they kicked him out. They gave him the boot. And luckily he landed on his feet with Wood Brothers, but that's what I'm saying. Teams, when you're a new guy show up to these race teams, they're not that loyal to you. They're going to bounce if they think they can get a better opportunity somewhere else. Anyway, it's going to be really weird seeing another driver in the 48 car. Maybe Rick Hendrick will dump the 48 entirely, bring back the 25 or something like that. But I don't know. Rick Hendrick, he left the 24 out there after Jeff Gordon retired. I think Rick Hendrick's going to probably keep the 48. I don't think he's going to get rid of the 48 car. I want to transition to this now. I want to leave this episode with one final thought, specifically about 2021. And I put out a tweet about this yesterday, but the way things are shaping up, 2021 truly is the start of the next generation of NASCAR. It is the rebirth of American stock car racing. 100%, you just look at what's changing that year. 2021, we're going to have the next gen car, a new race car, which is going to be completely different mechanically, externally. It's going to be completely different than the cars we've been racing the last several years. We're going to have a new schedule. We're already seeing a little bit of a new schedule next year in 2020, but by 2021, we could see another slight schedule adjustment. And there's been rumors, there's been talks, NASCAR's clearly putting an effort. They want to bring at least one new racetrack to the schedule. So we could very much see a new track or several on the schedule by 2021. NASCAR is going to have a new business model. It's not even going to be called the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series or the Sprint Cup Series or Nextel or anything like that. I mean, actually, this is starting next year. Technically, they're getting a head start on this one, but it's just going to be called the NASCAR Cup Series. And to top off all these changes, the driver lineup, the competitors that we're going to see on track in 2021 is going to look completely different. If you were a fan of NASCAR in 2013, not that long ago, just a few years ago, and you went to a coma and just woke up in 2021 and saw who was on track in the NASCAR Cup Series, you would have no idea what was happening. You would be stunned. You would not recognize 80% of these names probably. Jimmie Johnson's going to be gone. Jeff Gordon's been gone. Dale Earnhardt Jr., Carl Edwards, Matt Kenseth, Tony Stewart, Danica Patrick, Mark Martin, Greg Biffle, etc., the Labantes. So many iconic names from the last 2 decades are no longer racing in NASCAR. Most of those guys I just named are already gone. They've been gone for a couple of years at least. But by 2021, Jimmie Johnson will even be gone. Jimmie Johnson, the 7-time champion. The closest thing to Dale Earnhardt or Richard Petty we still had in NASCAR is going to be gone in 2021. That's why I say this is the rebirth of NASCAR. The only driver left probably in 2021 that still is going to be kind of bridging that gap is Kyle Busch and maybe Kevin Harvick if he doesn't retire. Harvick, there's a good chance 2020 or 2021 is going to be Harvick's last year. I would not be shocked. But Kyle Busch is still young enough. He's going to be bridging this gap. He's raced for a decade and a half already, and he's probably going to race for another decade or very close to it. So Kyle Busch is going to be the face, the only driver, the only brand that's kind of bridging the gap between what we've known as NASCAR for 60 years and what will become the next generation of NASCAR. Kyle Busch is it. Everything else is kind of separated into 2 parts. This is basically going to be NASCAR starting over. Now they own ISC. They're working closely with SMI. They own ARCA. They've changed the way the K&N series works with ARCA, and they're making that more closely integrated. 2021 is shaping up to be the rebirth of NASCAR, a new NASCAR. It's not going to look the same. It's not going to look that close at all to what we've come to know for decades now. 2021 is going to look very different. And I hope NASCAR fans are prepared. I think NASCAR fans need to start getting prepared for the many changes we're going to see in 2021. When Daytona rolls around that February, it's not going to look like the NASCAR you grew up watching. I'm prepared for it, or at least I'm getting prepared for it, but it's going to be hard for a lot of fans, especially if you're a big Jimmie Johnson fan, because he is still probably the most popular driver in NASCAR today. It's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting. NASCAR is going to have to go through another significant transition period, and I kind of think, assuming it goes well, 2021, I think they're built for success long term. I think NASCAR is creating a much more feasible, a much more sustainable business going forward, but it's going to be a rough transition period over the next couple of years, and we'll just see what happens on the other end of it. NASCAR is starting over, basically. So we'll see what happens. But that's all I want to talk about in this episode here today. Jimmie Johnson, huge, incredible career. I hope he wins a championship next year. That would be, he's a long shot. He's not my pick to win the championship next year. I'll just be happy if he wins a race and maybe makes the playoffs. But if Jimmie can win that championship next year, that would be incredible. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate your support. Remember to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and of course a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. Thank you to Mike Waffles, Michael Harrison, at You As The Stars, Cameron James, John Koblich, Jason R. Long, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Matthew Koulopoulos, Pepe Lucius, Jeremy Conklin, Emilio Garcia, Joey DiMacchino, Sky Racing Forum, Bryce Schumacher, Bryce Starcher, Colton Austin, Scott McNew, Bradley Pelletier, and the rest of these incredible Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this show without the support I get from every single one of you, so thank you for supporting the show. It really means a lot. I'm still working on those Homestead videos. I've been so busy the last couple days with stuff outside of YouTube as well, and then with Jimmie Johnson, big news. Had a lot of other videos I hadn't been working on, but the Homestead Miami videos will be up very shortly. First one will probably be up tomorrow, actually, so keep an eye out for those. Next week, I have a lot of Out of the Groove scheduled that I think are going to be really, really fun, so I hope you guys are looking forward to those. Thank you, as always, for the support, and I will see you all again very, very soon. Have a good rest of your week, everybody.